Davis steps under center. Gibson and McClendon behind him. Davis with motion by Richard. Will give the ball to McClendon. He leaps. Oh, he doesn't get in. He fumbled the football. Carolina holds. The game is over. And Carolina has won the game.
Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Woolfolk again. Woolfolk the other way. At the 30, the 40. Woolfolk to midfield. Miles Woolfolk with the pick. The Heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory.
Left side of the line. Hood standing to Williams' right. Williams gonna throw. One-on-one. Davis has it. Touchdown. Carolina wins. Carolina is the Coastal Division champion. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
Connor Barth for the possible win. Snap, spot, kick away, high enough, long enough. It's good! It's good! Carolina has won the game on a 42-yard field goal by freshman Connor Barth. Good gosh, dirty!
This is the Heel Tough Blog Podcast, Big Heads Media Podcast. Hey guys, and welcome into this edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. We are back to our previews. The bye week, we found a way to get through it. It was a very interesting bye week. A lot of great headlines. You guys can check that out up on the Heel Tough Blog website if you want to know more about that. But we are here today to preview the Tar Heels game this Saturday against the Virginia Tech Hokies. And to help me do that, of course, Josh Marlowe is with me as always. And, buddy, we'll have to start by referencing that one of our listeners, my guy Bobby Casey, he wants to hear from you more on the podcast. So apparently you have to be more involved today. There's no choice.
You literally stole the thunder right away from me. I was going to lead with that I deserve more.
Well, this is what I do on the podcast.
I need more of a role here. I'm contributing at a really high level. Reviewing the film, there is room for you to improve as a host because I've reached co-host peak.
Good God.
On the podcast. No, thank you for the feedback though. I've been asking for more airtime. He told me I wasn't allowed to talk.
Come on.
That's just how it works. But no, we're glad to be here. Massive game on Saturday. Really a massive stretch for Carolina as we go through these next 3 weeks. All three games against coastal opponents. Two of them will be, of course, in Kenan Stadium. But, it starts Saturday. You got to go to Blacksburg. And if you want to do what you think we're capable of, and the ESPN FBI has this team favored to win every game out.
Right.
Which no one would have thought at the beginning of the year they'd be favored to win every game.
We weren't the favorite in any of the games to begin the year. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. No way. Nobody thought. I mean, be honest. Did you think we would be 3-3 at this point?
I
thought maybe 2-4.
I had us going 7-5.
So
so 3-3 kind of falls right where I had us.
Right.
But I mean, it just feels really good that basketball season 3 weeks away, but we're still locked into football season because the last couple of years when we got through Late Night with Roy, we were like, hell yeah, let's go because football season was over. For the majority, because either we were just hurt or last year we were hurt and we sucked. So this year, I mean, there's the effect Mac Brown's had. They're 3-3, doing it with a young quarterback, a defense that's beat to hell. It's just been a remarkable job so far, year one in Mac Brown 2.0.
Well, we've opened up the mic, and you have also opened up the language, and so you're going a little more in. This is. No, this is good though because
this is why I don't talk because I cuss too much. I guess
but I mean you can tell just from you talking right there, it's such a different mindset than in past years. Because you're right, by this time in the season we were pretty much like, okay, this team is not going to a bowl game. I mean, more the talk. I mean, the last 2 years, this podcast was pretty much at this time of the year was about
When we firing Fedora.
What is Larry's hot seat like? Like, how hot is this seat that we're actually talking about?
Last year, after the midway point, it was, okay, when are we firing this
Pretty
guy?
much, yeah. I mean, well, no. Was it the midway point? It was pretty much East Carolina. Once he lost that game, we were like, all right. So, how slowly is he packing his bags? Are we had reached that point like this at this time of the year where we were like, okay, is he getting fired mid-season? Like, we're going to see them just pop out 1 week, fire him, and Papuchis is going to take over? And that didn't happen, of course. Now it's a totally different mindset, like you said, with Mac Brown. And there's some other stuff that we'll tell you a little bit later on about that is just so different with Mac Brown as well. But when we talk about this Virginia Tech game, I mean, look, I saw them play. They were playing at the same time that Carolina was playing 2 weeks ago against Miami. They decided to go with Hendon Hooker, and it's been a completely different team since they made the change at quarterback. I mean, come on. Did we really think that Ryan Willis was going to be the guy to lead this team? He was a starting quarterback at Kansas. If you're the starting quarterback at Kansas, you are terrible unless you are Todd Reesing.
Yeah,
that's a reference to you, who used to be a big Todd Reesing fan.
Yeah, Todd Reesing,
during his 2008 season.
He was phenomenal. I used to kill on NCAA 08 with that guy. I mean, I said every
record. There you go. The one time you played without the Tar Heels on an NCAA football game.
But yeah, no, I think the quarterback change made sense for Virginia Tech.
Definitely.
The team has responded with better performances on offense. This team still isn't doing the stuff on offense that we grew accustomed to when Fuente was at Memphis. And when he first came to the ACC, this team was putting up 35 to 40 just about every week, no matter the opponent. And that's really seemed to drop down. I really think I was a big fan of Josh Jackson when he was a freshman at Virginia Tech.
I was going to say that loss is a lot bigger than we thought at the time, right? Like, we felt like, okay, he's, when he goes down with the injury, we thought, okay, Willis can hold it down. We, of course, thought he was going to come back. Then he transfers in the offseason, which my question is, okay, did Virginia Tech basically tell him, like, you need to look elsewhere because we're rolling with Ryan Willis or Hooker? Because I'm going to be really honest with you, like, I think he's kind of an under the radar. Is that kind of how we would look at him? I mean, he's underappreciated for sure. Like, he is a really good quarterback. It has showed this year with Maryland when he's been on the field and when he hasn't.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a quality quarterback. Remember his freshman year, they hosted Clemson, and it was kind of our first time to see him in a national spotlight. Clemson won the game, but he held his own in the ball game. So
yeah, did you know that his dad played baseball, by the way? Because they only showed his father in the stands 7 or 8 times in the first quarter.
We can't say anything. They showed Sam Howell's mom 30 times.
We haven't seen her since, though. Apparently,
in the season opener.
I don't know.
But I think that's one thing when you evaluate Virginia Tech's program, or really any college football program. Look at Carolina, for example. You got to have a quarterback, and they haven't had a quarterback. Yeah. And it seems like they may have found one now. And it leads into what's a massive game Saturday. Sold-out crowd in Blacksburg, which is kind of a joke because they couldn't fill the stadium last week for Rhode Island. But now it's sold out. I wonder if Kyle Bailey will be in attendance. If so, expect him to leave in the second quarter because he's got better things to do. But
he didn't talk about him yesterday.
It's going to be, it's always been a challenge for Carolina to go there and win. They've only won there twice since I think Virginia Tech joined the ACC.
Yeah,
and I mean they're going to have their hands full Saturday afternoon.
Well, we remember the last time, of course, that they went there and won. That was in 2015. Another game that we remember that game because it was a game that coming in and even throughout most of the game we outplayed them, and they still had a chance late. So you're right. It's going to be very similar. This probably sounds very similar to when we talked about the Georgia Tech game. We don't go in there and win games easily. We don't go in there and win games usually, but when we win games, it takes a lot. It feels like it's going to be that same exact way on Saturday. 3:30 kick. Their stadium's going to be as packed as it's been all year. Which, there were people on there saying it's probably because they hate Carolina. Yes, yeah, that's that. I don't get why, But that's one that, I mean, they consider us probably right behind Virginia as their biggest rivals. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
It's more of a recruiting thing within the fan bases because we recruit Virginia heavily. They recruit our state heavily. Really, what Saturday is when we're leading into the Georgia Tech game, Mack Brown talked about this team's got to grow from Clemson. Mm-hmm. They got to handle the effort from Clemson and duplicate it in an area where even though Georgia Tech isn't good, Carolina hasn't won there when Georgia Tech hasn't been good. And Carolina, of course, went to Atlanta and controlled the game really from the opening kick. Saturday is going to be another point where we can look and see, okay, this team has matured from Georgia Tech, how they handled the win over that, how they handled a bye week, and how they handle what's going to be probably the toughest environment they've played in all year long in Lane Stadium.
Yeah, I would agree with that, yes.
In a game that is a swing game for how this Coastal race is going to go. If Carolina wins it, Carolina's probably going to be the favorite to win the Coastal. If not, it kind of opens everything back up for any team to kind of slip in there and really back their way into winning that Coastal to go earn the right to go get blown out by Clemson, which we all think Carolina's the best team to play Clemson because, they lost Clemson by a point. But, I
agree with that.
That's irrelevant now. Carolina's got to go do what they did at Atlanta.
You got to get there first.
And you got to duplicate that Saturday. Be interested to see what the game plan is like. If they're 2 weeks since Sam Howell went off, is that the offense now? We're going to be, okay. I don't think Mack Brown wants to throw it 50 times, but I think if he has to, he trusts Sam Howell to do it. And if the running game can kind of still produce, it's been hit or miss so far this season.
Well, I definitely think that their game plan is going to be to throw the football a little more because Virginia Tech comes in allowing 234.7 yards per game through the air. So this is a team that has struggled against the pass so far this season. I think it's smart for Carolina to come out and be aggressive. I mean, look, we saw it, that they took advantage of what was the weak point of that Georgia Tech defense, which was their run defense that sort of opened up the passing game. I think that, look, they got to take advantage of Virginia Tech struggling against the pass. That might open up the running game. I mean, look, this Virginia Tech defense, nowhere near as bad as they were a year ago. But here's my thing.
They're still pretty bad for Bud Foster standards.
And you were up in the game against Miami. You were up 28-0.
And should have lost.
And let them back into the game. Yeah, you should have gotten beat.
In all honesty. Yeah, there's no reason why Phil Longo shouldn't be afraid to let Sam Howell go into this environment and air it out. Because this Virginia Tech defense isn't what Bud Foster was accustomed to having, what we grew up watching, the lunch pail defense, whatever corny name they call it.
I still call it that.
I'm going to read a stat that is, we heard on Twitter just a couple minutes ago, but it's a relevant stat. Sam Howell has 11 touchdowns passes of 10 yards or more, I think is what the stat read, which is more than Trevor Lawrence and Jake Fromm have combined. Two quarterbacks.
Shout out to our boy Tar Nation who put that on there.
Two quarterbacks that have started in national championship games against Alabama.
Yeah.
Now I know it's different because of competition and all that, but
I'm going to tell you, pump the brakes. Just
Sam Howell should be trusted to throw the ball and throw the ball deep.
Legit.
Dyami Brown has done a very good job all year long getting separation on the deep routes, which is something that we talked heavily in the preseason. We expected him to do it, and he's done that. So at this point now, there's no reason to have the training wheels on Sam Howell or this offense.
Right.
You want to go win the Coastal, your best chance is letting the young kid play.
Well, yeah, you got to take the training wheels off if you're trying to win the ACC Coastal. And I agree. I mean, Dyami Brown has been fantastic. I also think, Bo Corrales has shown at this point that if you throw the ball up, he has a chance to go up and get just about every pass. And,
he's done what we complained about under Larry Fedora, was just give him an opportunity to make plays. He may not be a great route runner or whatever,
right?
But the guy has a knack for making plays, high-pointing the football at the point of attack and doing stuff like that. And we've seen that incorporated in this offense, and it's really added another element in the passing game.
Yeah, no, he's been fantastic this season. Coming into the year, Antone Green was ahead of him on the depth chart. He was the guy that came into the South Carolina game kind of as that number 4 wide receiver. And once Antone Green went down, he's really stepped up and been fantastic. 18 catches, 213 yards, and 3 touchdowns so far this year. I think it's 3 touchdowns here. Let me make sure of that. But at this point, I mean, to me, that's your red zone threat. I think that, I want to personally see more back shoulder throws to him. 3 touchdowns so far this year. So, I mean, look, Bo Corrales is getting the job done. That's one of the strengths of this Tar Heel offense is that wide receiving core, which we kind of expected. There was a lot of talent there, a little bit of unproven talent, but really this offense is starting to click. I agree. It's time to open up this offense. I understood why they were not hesitant to open up the offense early in the year. They wanted to open up the offense, but when you lose a guy like Charlie Heck against App State, you didn't have him, it's tough to just, they got so much pressure, and the week before against Wake Forest, you allowed 6 sacks. It's hard to just say, okay, we're going to let our quarterback go out there slinging around the yard today when we've got a backup left tackle in and also some injuries along the offensive line. Ed Montilus, I think, was dealing with something in that game because Billy Ross played 56 snaps. Montilus played just 32. And let's be real honest. I mean, Billy Ross was solid last year. Ed Montilus is the better of the 2 options. So, to me, that told me something was wrong there. That's why I think now the line's a little bit healthier. Charlie Heck's fighting through the injury. He fought through it against Georgia Tech. Same thing with Ed Montilus. He saw more reps against Georgia Tech than he'd seen in the prior 2 weeks. So, I think now, this is the type of offense that we should expect. I mean, look, Carolina ran 100 plays against Georgia Tech. They picked up the speed a little bit. Now, also, Georgia Tech's offense was just abysmal. So, I mean, it's pretty hard to not run that amount of plays when Georgia Tech runs, I think it was 30. They couldn't really stay on the field at all. So, I don't know if that's exactly what we're going to see from Virginia Tech. But, when I look at Virginia Tech, the one thing that I think is interesting about them, this is a little bit of a different offense than we've seen in the past, too. You mentioned the defense being a lot different, not as aggressive. Their offense is more pass-heavy than it's been the last few years. I mean, Hendon Hooker, first 2 games, thrown for 453 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. The problem for Virginia Tech, I always felt like when they were really good, they could always run the ball extremely well. Now, I mean, Deshaun McClease hasn't been awful, 84 carries, 403 yards, averaging out to 4.8 yards per carry. But, I mean, they're not as good as they used to be. Like, you remember back when Frank Beamer really had them rolling, they could run the football just about as good as anybody in the country.
It's kind of odd how when we grew up, Frank Beamer teams ran the ball, played really good defense, and they won 10 or 11 games year in, year out. And now we look at Justin Fuente, and they have a hard time running the ball consistently well.
Right.
And when he first got into the ACC, when he came over from Memphis, they didn't because of the talent that Frank Beamer had. Kind of fitted his spread scheme, and it worked.
Thing, man. Frank Beamer could still recruit even at the end.
And now that Fuente's bringing in his guys and what they want to do with the scheme, it hasn't really worked out as well. It could be a game, but even though Carolina has improved against the run, they still give up 160 yards a game. This could be a game where Virginia Tech can look at that and try to attack Carolina in the run game. But if I'm Virginia Tech, why not come out and throw? The secondary for Carolina is depleted. I mean,
definitely.
You've got third-string freshmen out there that we were not expecting to play that are out there right now getting valuable reps for Carolina, but they're young and inexperienced, are going to make mistakes. So it's going to be odd because you want to establish the running game, but Carolina is vulnerable against the pass.
Well, you talk about that secondary. I mean, you said, the defense is beat to hell. It's not even necessarily the defense. It's pretty much the entire secondary. There's basically no one left. Bryson Richardson, of course, started the year out for the season with a torn ACL. You had, of course, Patrice Rene went down in week 2 against Miami with a torn ACL. He's not coming back this year. Cameron Kelly, torn ACL on a tackle against Trevor Lawrence in the game against Clemson, done for the season. You got 2 guys that are out for indefinite periods of time. Miles Woolfolk still working through something. As of right now, there really hasn't been an update on him, and we're assuming going into this game that the Tar Heels are not going to be able to have him ready to go. And then Trey Morrison was added to that list. He broke his arm against Georgia Tech. At least that was what everybody is pretty much confirming. Inside Carolina was the ones that first had that report, and everybody seems to be rolling with that. So that is the belief right now, is that that's the injury that's hampering him. So those 2 out for an indefinite period of time. And then Trey Shaw has been missing in action since the game against South Carolina with an undisclosed injury. So we have no idea when he's coming back. There has been no comment on him. So you're right. I mean, we're rolling with a guy in, Storm Duck, who we talked about on the midseason awards podcast, really has played really great. And Mac Brown talked about him, repeatedly on his radio show on Monday about how great he's looked so far this year. He was kind of just thrown into the fire against Clemson and was fantastic.
You're not allowed to suck with an elite name like Storm Duck. But when I think about the secondary, I just envision that picture from Will Smith in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when he walks into the room and there's nobody there.
Yeah, that's Storm Duck walking around.
And that's probably more Miles Dorn because he's just like, where the hell is everybody?
Yeah, I mean, you got Miles Dorn and DJ Ford as your two guys who started the year on the team. And that's it. Even a lot of the guys that were rotational pieces are not even there. They're done for the season. So, I mean, look, you're rolling with Storm Duck. Now, the good thing about opposite of him, Greg Ross has started games before, but the problem with Greg is, look, he's been inconsistent. Like, he's had those moments where he's looked good. We thought early in the year this year he looked pretty good. He looked good against South Carolina when he had to start. But he's coming off his worst game of the year. He really struggled against Georgia Tech, against the speed of those receivers. I mean, Virginia Tech's got some guys that can run too. That's where they kind of got. Now, the good thing is Trey Turner is dealing with an injury that's kind of hampered him a little bit from being at 100% this year. That should help, but it's got to be a little bit of a concern, coming off your worst game of the year against Georgia Tech. Now you're coming in. Now, the good thing is he did have the bye week, but still it's got to be a little concerning.
Yeah, he's just got to become, really, it's more mentally tough because when he makes a good play, he's high as a kite. And when he makes a bad play, which is a lot, he's lower than low. So,
and it's kind of like if he starts the game, it's how he starts the game. If his first play is good, the rest of the day he's going to have a solid game. If he starts with a rough play where they complete a deep pass, he's pretty much off his game the rest of the day. It's very strange, but I think you're right.
He's hot then cold. He's yes and no. I mean, that's what Greg Ross is.
Come on.
And it's been difficult. I think Dre Bly, though, I don't think we've given him enough credit for what he's done with this secondary navigating.
Him and Jay Bateman, who's coaching the safeties, those two have just. You're finding guys that you didn't think would see snaps this season at all, now having to rotate in.
And it's really, and if we're not going to look ahead to next year, but next year the secondary, because of what all the injuries, there's going to be a lot of depth, and you're bringing in two transfers. Right. Could be the strength of the defense next year.
Right.
So
you mentioned it. Kyler McMichael coming in from Clemson. Bryce Watt's going to come from Virginia Tech, and then you're also, this was confirmed the other night on the radio show, Patrice Renee is coming back for the 2020 season. So, I mean, you're right. The secondary is going to be loaded. That doesn't even include the fact that you're getting Cameron Roseman-Sinclair and Jaquarius Conley, as well as Jaden Chalmers, the cornerback, coming in. So, I mean, Max said on his radio show, he told the guys that are out there right now, hey, if this is your time to make an impression, because next year there ain't going to be a lot of spots up for grabs. We got all these guys in 5 spots to fill. You got to, if you're going to make your impression, this is your spot to do it. So, I think that's kind of good because these guys will see, okay, we need to step up and perform. This is not, I'm thrust in there. Well, they can't really bench me because they don't have anybody else, which I don't think is the mindset of these guys anyways. But they can't afford to have that mindset. This is their chance to prove themselves. I think some of these guys are going to step up. And one of the things, you mentioned with the coaching, I mean, look at the freshmen that are really stepping up and playing well. And, I mean, true freshman in Storm Duck, playing great so far this year. True freshman in Don Chapman, who's been, as good as you could have hoped in a game and a half of starting. And I mean, you're talking about, some of these guys that are going to be playing depth roles now. Obi Egbuna having to step up. And, he was a guy that pretty much probably thought, okay, I'm going to be playing on special teams for most of this year. He saw some reps against Georgia Tech. This week, he's going to be our main rotational guy against Virginia Tech. And, I mean, you're going to see other guys that are having to convert. That's one of the big things they talked about this week is the cross-training, too. DeAndre Hollins cross-training at both safety and corner, as well as Javon Terry also having to cross-train. So, I mean, to me, this is all sounding like something that you can talk about. This is going to weigh heavily on the defensive line and the linebackers when they blitz. You're going to have to get pressure on Hendon Hooker in order to get him off his game because let's be real. Miami didn't do it. Rhode Island, which is understandable, didn't do it. That allowed him to stand back there and pick them apart. That can't happen for Carolina on Saturday with all the young guys we're going to have out.
Yeah, it's always imperative to get pressure on the quarterback in football.
Of course.
But especially when you've got a depleted,
no one left.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically just praying for expecting the worst, praying for the best, or whatever that saying is.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how aggressive Jay Bateman gets, if he's aggressive early, because we've seen him early in the year. It was in the first half, it was kind of just getting the guys in the right position, but we weren't blitzing a lot. But in the fourth quarter, you'd see the pressure ramp up. That's kind of changed in the last couple of weeks where he's been a little more aggressive early in games. I think that's got to be the game plan this week because if Hooker gets into a rhythm, it could be a long day for your secondary and for this defense. And I don't know if Carolina wants to get into a track meet. I don't know if we're there yet, if we trust the offense to go put up 45 or 50.
Seen it 1 week, yeah.
So it's going to be interesting, but it's going to be something where the defensive line. It's good that Aaron Crawford's healthy. Strobridge is playing good. Timon Fox has been a pleasant surprise.
Yes.
Just need more consistency out of
That's all
him.
we're asking.
We know the linebackers are going to produce because Chaz Surratt and Jeremiah Gemmel are as two good linebackers in space in this conference.
Right.
And that's
one thing they got to tackle well.
Well, that's also
space.
something that this team it struggled on early in the year. But really, from the Clemson game, they tackled really well, and it carried over to Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I thought so, too.
And hopefully it's on the upward ascension.
Right. Now, okay, this defense, I feel like, especially early in this game, is going to be counted on pretty heavily. Am I the only one that feels like, they got into a rhythm against Georgia Tech? You talked about this when we were talking, I think, off air. It kind of stinks because this offense gets into a rhythm, has a really good start early in the game against Georgia Tech, outside of a few drop passes. I mean, this team started rolling a little bit. Then they go on the bye. Now they have to come off the bye and sort of pick up where they left off, which I don't know if it'll be easy. This kind of feels like it's going to be one of those sluggish starts that they're going to have to get by, right? Coming off the bye week. I mean, I hope not.
I don't know necessarily that because Phil Longo's done a pretty good job scripting the first drive or two of the game. It's just
after that first.
It's going forward from that, and a lot of times Carolina has scored on this opening drive or two. Usually, it's been a big play in the passing game with Sam Howell. It's after that is where Carolina's really struggled adjusting, and it's something that Phil Longo is, he's still getting adjusted to his quarterback and how Mac Brown wants him to manage the game. But it's something that Saturday, like if Carolina gets up 7-0, it's not something that you relax. You've got to go you got to chase points.
You got to be aggressive.
It's how I like to phrase that. Is just every time you always want to score, but you've got to look to score every time you got the ball early. I feel like.
Oh, I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I thought that was the best that we've seen it against Georgia Tech, and I feel like that's because also, I mean, you talked about Phil Longo and Mac Brown having to sort of adjust to each other. I think it's also the fact that you've got a freshman quarterback that's having to adjust to a college defense, being able to make adjustments a little bit better early in games than maybe a high school defense is able to do. And the scripted plays, I think, work really, really well. But at the same time, when he has to sort of, adjust his game plan a little bit to what the defense is showing you, I think that Sam, it takes a little bit of time. He's sort of starting to get comfortable with that. So I think he'll definitely have a chance to do that. So let's do we want to do game predictions?
I don't know. It's your podcast.
Yeah, well, let's do game predictions. Basically, I'm just saying, there's no other real, major talking points that you want to get out of the way with this game against Virginia Tech, right? I think the environment will be solid, but it's also a day game. If this was a night game that was sold out, I'd be a little more concerned.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot that I could speak on because I've been restricted for talking for 6 weeks.
Here we go.
But
actually, a year according to.
I mean, really, since I came on here, I was just kind of your puppet, I guess, is what I'm. Yeah, we'll do game predictions. I feel I'm going to pick Carolina to win the game, and not because of bias on the podcast.
Shocking.
I do think Carolina
on this podcast.
is the better team. They're not the healthier team, but I trust Mac Brown and what the staff has done and will continue to do. And I know Mack Brown spoke the other day about, I don't want to put pressure on these guys to win the Coastal when it's about getting better. That was Coach Speak 101, because I'm sure behind closed doors, when he took the job, he said, we're here to win, and we can win now. This is a good chance for Carolina to say, okay, yeah, we can win now. You go to Atlanta and win what you don't do. You go to Blacksburg and you win what you don't do. That's going to say a whole lot about this program, which Kirk Herbstreit's been very high on ESPN, speaking about Carolina and what Mack Brown has done as a program on the rise. So they want to continue to be that program on the rise. You go to Blacksburg and win. I think they'll do that in the manner of 31-21. I think Sam Howell continues to make good plays in the passing game. I think the running game is more consistent with both Javonte Williams and Michael Carter getting in on the action. And I think the defense holds up enough and limits Hooker to a mistake or two, and Carolina gets a win.
Okay, we are working to get Kirk Herbstreit on the podcast as well, because he does talk good about Carolina. Only people that talk good about Carolina on the podcast.
If
I'm just kidding, by the way.
If that happens, I need to be present for the interview. That is my analyst. He's the reason I got into college football and became a fanatic. So that'll be one that I need to be present and allowed to talk.
We are going to work on that. But no, I mean, there will be, trust me, if someone writes a slander article, they will be on here on this podcast, and we will debate them. That could go very well or very badly, but we'll tell you more about that as we go along. You're right. I think here's what I think Mack Brown is saying, though. Okay, I think Mack's saying, I'm not putting pressure on these guys, saying that that coming into the season, our expectation was for you guys to be in the ACC championship game, and now. What I think he's trying to do is basically telling these guys, hey, look, don't put the pressure on yourselves to win. You're not supposed to be this far ahead of schedule. You're not supposed to be in this spot having a chance to compete in the ACC Coastal with half of your defense on the sidelines wearing cast. That's kind of what I think he's trying to get across to these guys. So going into this game against Virginia Tech, I think what he wants them to do is to go in and say, look, don't have that, that expectation that we have to win, that we must win this game. We're expected to win this game. Go in with that mindset that you had in the first half of the season, which was nobody expects us to be in this position. Nobody expects us to win this game, even though they actually do. I think that, Carolina, like you said, they've started to show some things. I think, this offense is starting to gain a little more confidence. I think even with the bye week, they'll be fine. I think they realize that they can carry over what they did against Georgia Tech into this week. I think the other thing is that, they know that, look, we went into Georgia Tech, a place that we didn't have a lot of success. We came away with a win. Just because we haven't had a lot of success at Virginia Tech doesn't mean that we can't do the same as we did in Georgia Tech. I think they come out pretty confident. Look, we know that this team is not going to make it easy. It's going to be close games the rest of the way. Virginia Tech, to me, is better now than they were earlier in the season with Hooker at quarterback. There's still some people that say we need to see more of it. I don't really need to see more of it. I think they're a better team now. But I think they are still going to have some struggles. You know what? I'm going to go a little bit more low scoring than that. I think that Carolina gets a 27-24 victory on the road at Virginia Tech. I think that's kind of what we're looking at the rest of the season. Is going to be some of those lower scoring, tough battles. I think Carolina's ready for it. We see some things defensively. I think we do create a turnover or two that helps us along the way in the game. And I think Carolina ultimately pulls out an important victory that will put them at 4-3 and 3-1 in the conference and would set up a huge game against the Duke Blue Devils the next week at home. So let's do our key. Okay, we'll do key to the game first. What's your key to the victory on the road in Blacksburg?
When you're going on the road, you got to win the game. You got to protect the football. Which team wins the turnover battle, I think, will win. I kind of trust Sam Howell to not turn the ball over. 3 picks in 6 games so far this year. So I think he'll protect the ball.
I agree.
And I think Jay Bateman understands his defense is going to have to make a play or two, and you're going to have to be aggressive and force Hooker to make a mistake. I think he'll do that, and we'll force him into an interception or maybe a fumble, and it'll help Carolina secure a road win.
I'm kind of with you on, I thought you were going with, when you were saying about Jay Bateman, the pressure. That's my key. Got to get pressure on the quarterback this week more than I think any so far this year, because that young secondary needs some help. They need to have the quarterback hit the ground a few times. And, you know, I mean, look, this team's done it because, I mean, you look at the third down percentage so far this year, it's been pretty good. You know, their defensive numbers continue to show that. I want to see him ramp it up. I expect, you know, look, Timon Fox, hopefully this is another big game from you. And, I mean, look, with Jason Strowbridge definitely being more healthy, this was big for him to get this time off and heal that ankle injury that he had early in the season. Aaron Crawford gets a little time to relax after what was a great start to the season. I think this team's going to be ready, and I think that's one of the keys to the game. Get after the quarterback, get him on the ground. That'll help this Carolina defense out. So who's the guy that maybe we're not talking about? Basically, who is the guy that's not Sam Howell or Chaz Surratt that's going to have a big game?
Jay Schroeder. No, I'm just kidding. It's not going to be Jay
there
Schroeder.
we go. I don't think he's going to be active, by the way. I think it will be Amendola again as the backup on the road.
I think it's going to be. We've said this name a lot. I think I spoke a lot about Sam Howell throwing the ball.
Right.
I think Javonte Williams got to set the tone with his ability to finish runs. Because you know he always finishes forward, which is you don't see a whole lot in football these days. Backs that finish runs,
especially not in college.
Right, and he does just a phenomenal job at finishing the run. And I think he'll get back to setting the tone, being aggressive, and helping this offense establish a ground game and help Sam Howell be productive in the air.
You know what? I'm going to go with Storm Duck. I think they're going to need him to step up and play really well in this game. I mean, look, Damon Hazleton is a guy that's really gotten going. He was, the guy that we heard about all last year before the matchup in Chapel Hill. As being their top receiver. He's starting to get his footing back under him a little bit here with Hendon Hooker now at quarterback. I think that's going to be the prime matchup for Storm Duck most of the day. I think Storm's going to have to play well, and I think he does. I think he'll be the guy that we'll be talking about when we head back for the recap podcast, which will be Monday. We're going to do that Monday? Yeah, probably. We'll probably do that Monday as he nods looking on his phone. You see, this is why you're not talking.
I'm just going to find the guy that said I need to talk more. Because
sure.
No, actually, I am because I don't see it.
So.
I think it's all a lie. You don't.
No,
want to.
it's not. I'll DM you after. I'll DM you the tweet afterwards. He'll probably tweet at us again today saying I like this. He's talking more.
See, there's two things that happen whenever you let me talk more. A, I cuss, and B, you say you're right. So this needs to be more going forward. I've been here for like 2.5 years. I've earned the right to talk.
I cannot believe it. Bobby, this is you're creating a rift in the podcast here. Now, what's next? What are you going to demand a pension or something?
I mean, I'm asking for pay for like 6 weeks because of all the stuff I'm doing, writing, talking.
There we go.
Covering games. I mean, I'm spending money to go to these
definitely.
games.
Really? Do we want to get into that debate on the podcast?
So,
we can ask the listeners if they think that it's fair how things are going down so far. We're not going to do that, though.
Okay.
We're not going to do that, though. I'm paying for you to go to games so far, but that's okay. We'll let that one go. Anyway, make sure that you guys head to HeelToughBlog.com where you can check everything out. There's a couple other storylines that I did want to touch on right before we get out of here, some of the other major things that are going on around Tar Heel football. As you guys know, of course, Desmond Evans, the 2025 star weak side defensive end, he is going to announce his commitment on Friday. Unfortunately, I will not be making the trek out to Sanford. I was wanting to, but with everything that's going on with my job, I am not going to be able to make it out. The good news is that I am going to be able to go out and do a scouting report on Friday. I will be taking a look at 2023 star athlete commit for the Tar Heels, Cedric Gray. Get a look at him as Audrey Kell goes up against Olympic. That should be a fantastic game that we're going to, but that'll be a great test to see him in. But we will have, of course, all the coverage of Desmond Evans' commitment. We'll talk about, what his commitment would mean if we do land him, and then who we're going to go out and try to get after that, because if the Tar Heels do land him, that would be 23 guys in the class. Most people think that the Tar Heels will probably take up to 25, and there is also another guy that some think is closing in on a commitment. We'll tell you a little bit about that in that article after Desmond Evans commits wherever he commits. We will have an article up on that, so make sure you guys do check that out. Some other news around Tar Heel football, of course, we talked about it here. Trey Morrison is out indefinitely with a broken arm. It was first reported by Inside Carolina. Multiple sources told him that. Now, the football program did not confirm that that was the injury. They just came out and said that it was an upper body injury, but they did confirm that he will be out for an indefinite period of time. So we are unsure when Trey will be back. Some other news for the football program as well. The game against Duke, of course, will be a lottery system, if you guys didn't know that. So students will be on a lottery system. I believe they're still going to let some students in afterwards, which will be good because the Tar Heels are one of just 9 teams so far this season that have had 100% attendance, or at least reported 100% attendance. It's pretty close. I mean, how many schools actually have 100% attendance is kind of a little bit of a question mark.
Duke.
But okay, I'm going to tell you, Duke is probably as far as it gets from having 100% attendance. But I think Nebraska, Ohio State, big name programs up there. Carolina's right up there with that group so far. So make sure, I know that game against Duke sold out. That's homecoming. Going to be fantastic crowd there as well. So make sure you guys go check that out. HeelToughBlog.com is where you can check out all the stuff that we're going to have. Recap of the game against Virginia Tech, and then we'll start to get into previews. Well, recap will involve the recap, the stock report, and the trench report. That's where you can check all that out, as well as you can check out basketball, which is now on the site as well. We've got basketball team news, recruiting, everything that you need to know about the basketball team is up there. Some articles online right now about Garrison Brooks receiving some preseason accolades, as well as Cole Anthony. And also, Josh got that article on there that's doing extremely well about the 3 players that will miss time to start the season. Make sure you guys read that so you know who the Tar Heels will be without early in the season, of course. They start just under 3 weeks from now against Notre Dame. That'll be on a Wednesday night, and that will be I'm blanking. That's in the Smith Center. Yeah, play them later in the year on the road. That's right. So, yeah, should be very interesting. We'll have that coverage throughout the season for you guys. Of course, we'll have that little 3-week period where we'll be alternating, and then, of course, during the bowl game, we'll have you guys covered. There will, of course, still be a lot of football news. I'll be pretty much primarily writing football. He'll be pretty much primarily writing basketball. Sometimes we'll sort of cross over, of course, he does with the trench report, and there'll be maybe some other times in the offseason where there'll be some crossover, but most of the time, we'll cover our sports. We, of course, are looking for people to cover the sports. We made the joke the last time about the Olympic sports that some people did like, and other people, I don't know if they really liked it that much. But we are seriously looking, at least for a baseball writer, if anybody is interested in writing about the baseball team. Unfortunately, we are not able to get up to many games for the baseball team. We have been to a solid zero over the years. But we are trying to go to, I'm going to try to go to a game this year for sure. We definitely want to go to the Bosch. But unfortunately, it's kind of tough for us to be able to keep up with them as well as keep up with the football and basketball team. So we are looking for someone that wants to write baseball. If you're interested, just reach out to us at Future Tar Heel on Twitter for me, at Joshua Marlowe 5 for him, or of course you can message us on the accounts for the Heel Tough blog. You can do it on Facebook, Heel Tough blog Facebook page. That's the best place to check out all the new information as well, or the Twitter page, which is at Heel Tough blog on Twitter. So that is going to do it for this edition of the Heel Tough Blog podcast. Want to thank Josh for joining me. Want to thank you guys for listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.